real cooking really puts on the weight, don't it?
Luke, I've only been here overnight.
He's stuck in a slammer today of all days. It's a birthday, you know.
Oh, it is? Happy birthday, Daisy.
Why, thank you, Enos.
From 1979 to 1985, The Dukes of Hazzard aired with loud engines, real stunts, and a look that shaped pop culture. Every episode added something to its long-lasting influence. These are not small details. They are the real parts that made the show what it became. Each fact shows how it left a lasting mark on television history. Number 1, William Paley, the man who built CBS, openly hated The Dukes of Hazzard, even while it was one of his network's biggest hits. Paley didn't just dislike it quietly or keep his opinion to himself during private meetings. He called it garbage in public, and he used the word lousy so often in interviews that it became a kind of unofficial summary of his feelings toward the show. While other executives were counting the millions in advertising revenue and merchandise deals rolling in each quarter, Paley remained irritated that a show with car chases, denim shorts, and southern antics was drawing top 10 ratings on his prestigious network. He had spent decades shaping CBS into a respected cultural force, full of news, drama, and prestige programming, and now he was watching viewers fall in love with something he saw as lowbrow and embarrassing. This wasn't just a difference in taste, it became a symbol of the growing divide at CBS between traditional elitism and mass market appeal. While the audience couldn't get enough of the wild action and over-the-top charm, Paley quietly fumed, convinced it was dragging down the image of everything he had built. Number 2. At the height of its popularity, The Dukes of Hazzard was receiving close to 60,000 pieces of fan mail every month. But what surprised everyone was who the mail was really for. More than half of the letters weren't written to Bo, Luke, or Daisy. They were sent directly to the General Lee, the bright orange Dodge Charger that had become the most beloved character on the show. People treated the car like it was a living thing, asking for autographs, sending in drawings, and even writing emotional notes thanking it for helping them through tough times. The car had no lines, no human traits, and no backstory, but it still managed to steal the spotlight week after week. The horn that played Dixie, the high-flying jumps, and the welded doors created something that felt more mythical than mechanical. Studio staff had to set up systems to manage the flood of car-specific fan mail, which often included requests for posters, blueprints, or personalized photos. Producers started to realize that the car wasn't just a prop, it was a marketing goldmine. They licensed toys, lunchboxes, and even remote control versions that flew off the shelves. All of this started because viewers saw something in the General Lee that felt powerful and personal, something that outshone the human cast and turned a car into a celebrity. Number 3, Katherine Bach's denim shorts became one of the most recognizable pieces of clothing on television, but they almost didn't make it past the censors.
Now, I know millions of girls are always dropping in here with cheap tricks to help you get their career started. Well, I decided to do the same thing.
When she first showed up on set, wearing the now famous cutoffs, the network executives immediately raised concerns about whether they were too revealing for primetime audiences. Rather than force her to change the look, they came up with a compromise that would satisfy broadcast standards without losing the visual impact. They required her to wear sheer, flesh-colored pantyhose underneath the shorts. That small adjustment let the wardrobe stay as daring as ever, while technically meeting the guidelines for decency on air. Katherine Bach wasn't entirely comfortable at first. Wearing the shorts in public settings like diners or scenes around town made her self-conscious, but she understood their role in defining Daisy's playful, confident image. The shorts eventually took on a life of their own, inspiring a fashion trend that went far beyond the show. Fans didn't know about the pantyhose detail at the time, but behind the scenes it was a crucial part of how the character's style got approved. It's one of those quiet decisions that shaped what became a cultural icon, blending risk and restraint in a way that helped the show push boundaries without crossing the line. Number 4. During the height of the show's popularity, the producers took out a $1 million insurance policy on Katherine Bach's legs, treating them like a vital part of the production.
I heard that your legs are insured for $20 million. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, you know what it is, Lee? I do things that I shouldn't really do. Like I ski. Don't tell anybody in LA.
Don't tell
anybody in the studio.
Yeah.
I ski. I had a plane when I started this series, which they made me get rid of. A lot of things, and I sort of take chances. So they thought that they should insure my legs.
The decision wasn't made as a throwaway publicity stunt, even if it sounded like one in the tabloids. Bach's character Daisy Duke had become inseparable from her look, and her long legs framed by those famously short denim cutoffs were now a core part of the show's visual brand. There was real financial logic behind it. If she were injured and couldn't film or had to wear different costumes, the show's market appeal might suffer. Her image was tied not only to the show's ratings, but also to merchandise sales and promotional appearances. Bach was aware of the policy, but she didn't treat it like a badge of honor or a point of vanity. She approached it like an occupational detail. Strange maybe, but part of working in a world where physical presentation mattered just as much as line delivery. Years later, she reflected on how surreal it was to have her body formally valued and protected by lawyers and insurers. It captured the strange reality of television in that era, where everything, even legs, could become commercial assets with price tags. Number 5. When Katherine Bach first walked on set in her homemade denim shorts, no one could have guessed she was about to kick off a global fashion trend. Those cut-off jeans, tight and frayed, and barely reaching mid-thigh, weren't pulled from a wardrobe trailer. They were a personal choice, part of how she envisioned her character. The producers were skeptical at first, concerned it might be too much for television, but it worked so well on screen they let it stick. Soon after, teenage girls across America started cutting up their jeans the same way. Fashion magazines picked it up, fans copied it, and suddenly there was a name for that specific look: Daisy Dukes. They weren't just hot pants anymore, they were tied directly to a character and a cultural moment. Even people who never watched the show used the term. Years later, pop stars and designers recycled the look, but it always came back to that original Southern character in tiny jean shorts. It was one of those strange cases where fiction leaks into reality, and a wardrobe choice becomes something people wear to music festivals, clubs, and beaches, long after the show itself fades from prime time. Number 6. Long before the Dukes of Hazzard aired on TV, there was a little-known film called Moonrunners that laid down the blueprint for everything the show would become. It came out in 1975 and followed two cousins, Bobby Lee and Grady Hagg, who ran moonshine in rural Georgia while dodging corrupt sheriffs and mob-connected county bosses. They drove a fast car, answered to a wise old uncle named Jesse, and spent most of their time skirting trouble in a system that seemed rigged against them. The film was written and directed by G.Y. Waldron, who later created the show and carried over much of the DNA, from the family structure to the car chases to the country storytelling. Even Waylon Jennings, the voice behind the show's narration and theme song, played the same role in the movie. The tone changed a lot between the two. Moonrunners was gritty, more adult, with tougher language and a harder edge. When it became a TV series, everything was softened. Less drinking, more slapstick, and a lot more marketable charm. But the bones of it all were already there, just waiting to be reformatted into something that could survive network television. Number 7. In 1982, Tom Wopat and John Schneider packed up and walked off the show, fed up with how Warner Bros. Was handling the mountain of money pouring in from merchandise. The show had become a licensing machine, with toys, lunchboxes, and posters being sold across the country, and the actors believed they were owed a piece of that windfall. According to them, the studio wasn't being transparent, and they wanted to see the numbers. When that didn't happen, they left the set before filming the 5th season, forcing producers to scramble.
Sometimes it's kind of like a divorce, there were people that we really loved and still do, people on the crew and of course all the cast. And it wasn't them that we had to quarrel with, but those were the people that we had to kind of disturb their lives too, by doing what we did.
Bo and Luke's absence was explained with a single offhand line from narrator Waylon Jennings about them leaving Hazzard County to race in the NASCAR circuit, an explanation so thin it ignored their probation and barely connected to anything the characters had done before. That's how Coy and Vance Duke came into the picture, two cousins from out of nowhere who were supposed to carry the torch.
I'm real happy that those boys made the NASCAR circuit. It's just that things aren't going to be the same around here anymore.
That's for sure.
They were written as near-carbon copies of the originals, with producers even recycling Bo and Luke's scripts and swapping only the names. Their mannerisms, costumes, and personalities were almost identical, and early episodes even swapped out the iconic orange General Lee for a blue Dodge Charger, a change that clashed with the show's identity. Fans never warmed up to them, seeing Coy and Vance as the discount aisle version of Bo and Luke, and the ratings made that clear almost immediately. While Warner Bros. Tried to tough it out, the pressure to fix things mounted. Negotiations moved forward, contracts were revised, and eventually the original Duke boys returned in early 1983. That season started with a kind of reset, brushing Coy and Vance aside, like a storyline nobody wanted to remember. It was one of those rare times when a TV audience pushed back so hard that producers had no choice but to listen. Number 8. Tension behind the scenes wasn't limited to the lead actors. Several supporting cast members had their own conflicts that caused disruptions throughout the show's run. James Best, who played Sheriff Roscoe Coltrane, once refused to show up for work over the condition of his dressing room. He had serious complaints about how he was being treated by the production team, and he held firm until the issue was resolved. Meanwhile, Ben Jones, who played the mechanic Coltrane, stepped away for a stretch because the producers insisted he shave his beard. Jones felt the demand was unnecessary and out of line with how he saw his character. For a show that leaned so heavily on lightheartedness and charm on screen, there was a surprising amount of friction behind the camera. Some of it was about money, some of it was about control, but most of it came down to how much say the actors had in shaping the roles they were hired to play. These weren't massive blow-ups that shut everything down, but they added a layer of stress to a production that already had its hands full with car stunts, rewrites, and tight schedules. Number 9. The sheer number of Dodge Chargers wrecked during filming turned the General Lee from a muscle car into a kind of disposable stunt machine. Over the show's 7 seasons, estimates of how many cars were used or destroyed vary depending on who you ask, but most sources agree the number crosses 300, even though 150 is often quoted for simplicity. That's not because they were careless, it's just that launching a car off ramps into rivers and through barns tends to do a number on the chassis. Most of the vehicles couldn't survive a single jump. Some were rigged for high-impact scenes and barely lasted a few takes before being scrapped for parts. Warner Bros. Got so desperate to keep the fleet going that they started leaving handwritten offers on Chargers they found in parking lots, asking the owners if they'd be willing to sell. Cars were stripped, swapped, repainted, and sometimes disguised as 1969 models when they were actually from different years. By the end, only a handful of screen-used General Lees survived in one piece. Those that did have become collector's items, restored and protected, like artifacts from a time when TV stunts weren't done with green screens or CGI, just a gas pedal, a roll cage, and a lot of trial and error. Number 10. One of the General Lee's most iconic moments wasn't created in a special effects studio. It happened on a dirt ramp in a patch of open field. In a scene that ended up in the opening credits and defined the look of the show, the Charger launched 82 feet through the air, reaching a peak of about 16 feet high. At the time, it was the longest distance a car had jumped for a television production, and it wasn't achieved by accident. Early attempts to film big jumps had failed because the cars kept landing nose first, smashing their front ends and nearly injuring the drivers. To fix that, the crew started loading the trunks with cement blocks, weighing the rear down so the car could glide more evenly through the air. It worked, kind of. The car was still totaled after it landed, but the footage was clean and the shot became part of TV history. That record-setting jump wasn't just about showing off, it gave the General Lee a kind of legendary status and became the gold standard for what the show's action sequences could look like when everything went exactly right.